Sorry about that stupid thing. My laptop needs to update or something. It's slower than molasses on a rainy day. Oh man, it is what it is. So it's an AA day. I'm just gonna go ahead and get the meeting started. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Thank you. I'm Sandra and I'm an alcoholic. It's been a crazy morning, just in the past half hour. I knew I should get started it earlier. Been crazy. Anyway, please don't be judging each other in the chat. Be kind. This is an AA meeting. It's about helping others, not bringing them down. If you're new here, welcome. If you've been here before, welcome. Hello, my good friend Shannon, my bestie. Good to see you. Sorry it took me so long to come in. Either way, here we go. 1. We admitted we were powerless over alcohol, that our lives had become unmanageable. 2. Came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. 3. Made a decision to turn our will and our lives toward the care of God as we understood Him. 4. Made a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves. 5. Admitted to God, to ourselves, and to another human being the exact nature of our wrongs. 6. We're entirely ready to have God remove these defects of character. 7. Humbly asked Him to remove our shortcomings. 8. Made a list of all persons we had harmed and become willing to make amends to them all. 9. Made direct amends to such people wherever possible, except when to do so would injure them or others. 10. Continue to take personal inventory and when wrong, promptly admit it. 11. Sought through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with God as we understood Him, praying only for knowledge of His will for us and the power to carry that out. 12. Having had a spiritual awakening as a result of these steps, we try to carry this message to alcoholics and to practice these principles in all our affairs. I always put in the description what we're reading, the page number, the name of what we're reading. If you have the books, great. If not, don't worry. I'm going to read it anyways. And then talk about things that I have done in that certain area to help me, help myself to continue to stay sober and to get sober. Today is Tightrope. Sorry about the dog. Lay down. Oh boy. Trying to navigate separate worlds was a lonely charade that ended when this gay alcoholic finally landed in AA. Drinking was always a part of my family background. All the men in my family drank. My father and later my brothers were heavy drinkers. As long as a person held down a job, didn't embarrass his family or friends too frequently, and kept out of trouble, he was entitled to get drunk on a regular basis. Drinking was an adult thing to do, a part of growing up. I don't believe it ever crossed my mind that I shouldn't drink. I was raised in a conservative religion and I commuted to religious schools some distance from home. Because I had a quick mind and was comfortable with academics, I became something of a teacher's pet. As a result, I was a serious, shy, somewhat bookish child and teenager who found it difficult to relate to my peers. So when I went away to college, I was an alcoholic waiting to happen. My relation to alcohol was a love affair for the or from the very beginning. Although I wasn't too thrilled with the taste, I loved the effect. Alcohol helped me to hide my fears. The ability to converse was an almost miraculous gift to a shy and lonely individual. It was at this time that I also began to struggle with the question of my sexuality. For me, the idea of being homosexual, the word gay wasn't then in common use, was unthinkable. Drinking helped me to forget and evade. Also, it provided some cover when you are drunk. People are not surprised at an inability or disinclination to make any serious move towards a woman. This struggle continued throughout years of unsuccessful dating and pretending. When I eventually decided to act on my desires, the guilt and the shame, as well as the drinking, increased. Now I had to hide not only my thoughts, but also my conduct. I always tried to protect the image of the conservative, masculine, deep-voiced loner with the mysterious, possibly tragic, but always heterosexual love affair in the past. I wound up living two separate and distinct lives, that of a gay man with friends and interests to match, and that of the straight man with a totally separate set of friends and interests. I had to work this tightrope while trying to build a solid professional life as well. After college, I had gone on to law school, where drinking on a daily basis became the norm. I justified myself with the thought that a few drinks helped me to relax and focus on my studies. Somehow, I managed to do well in law school and to land several prestigious legal positions afterwards. I soon learned that I could not drink during the day. If I had even one drink at lunch, the rest of the afternoon would be lost. Instead, I postponed my drinking until immediately after work and would then make up for lost time. Work in a law firm added a third side of my already divided life. Now I had to try to maintain social relations with clients, members, and associates of the firm, in addition to my gay and straight friends from my private life. Needless to say, as the drinking increased, things became even more confused. Eventually, the pressure became too great. Became too great. I had formed a serious relationship and decided that I could no longer carry on the deception. Instead, I would change careers and go into teaching. For a while, things seemed to be going well, but the slide toward active alcoholism was slowly accelerating. I had had my first blackout several years before. At that time, I told myself that if it ever happened again, I would stop drinking. It happened again and again and again, but I didn't stop. I was always able to come up with some explanation, excuse, or rationalization that justified my continued drinking. In time, personality changes began to occur with regularity. When I drank, I had always had a sharp tongue. When drinking, I frequently became vitalic. At other times, I could be charming and affectionate, sometimes too much so. People never knew just what I would do or say. After a few years, I was a nightly blackout drinker. My lover drank heavily as well, and I began to compare my drinking with his. I argued to myself that I could not have a problem because his drinking was worse than mine at times. In fact, I suggested that he might try AA. When he did try this fellowship, I did all I could to undermine his efforts to get sober. His recovery would present an obvious, if unacknowledged, threat to my drinking. Eventually, the stress became too much and we broke up. But not before I had succeeded in undermining his recovery. The slide continued. Most of my friends were unwilling to put up with my conduct, the verbal and sometimes physical abuse, the midnight phone calls, the forgotten invitation, and the selfish disregard of anything but my own need to drink. Those few friends who did not withdraw were focused or forced away by my resentment and increasing paranoia. Sorry. I cut people out of my life, refusing to return phone calls and ignoring them when we met by chance. By the end of my drinking, only two people were willing to have anything to do with me on a social basis, and both were heavy drinkers who were not surprised by my actions. This case, or the cases in which disaster struck when I drank outside my home increased. I made inappropriate passes at parties or at people at work, both men and women. At other times, I acknowledged battered or with my watch or wallet missing, or in the company of strangers whose names I did not remember and did not want to know. There were the inevitable injuries and accidents. I was ejected from bars because I would steal tips or change from bartenders or other customers to pay for the drinks I could no longer afford. At other times, I would get into arguments and be forced to leave. In consequence, I made the seemingly local decision not to drink outside the house. Instead, most of my drinking was now solitary. When I left work, I would have a few stiff drinks at dinner and then go home. I would stop off at the kitchen to pick up a glass, some ice, and some mixer. I would go to my bedroom where I kept half-gallon bottles of gin and vodka and read. While the ice melted, the mixer ran out, and sometimes the glass broke. Every night was blackout drinking. The really bad times were when I would have to struggle outside to a liquor store or bar late at night, weaving and trying not to stagger because I had miscalculated and run out of alcohol. I found it increasingly difficult to do anything more than work and drink. I was afraid to use public transportation or even to walk on the street. My stomach was constantly upset, and my doctor had diagnosed a number of intestinal diseases or intestinal disorders. Even though I rarely drank away from home, my body was covered with bruises because I often fell down during blackouts. I never wore short sleeve shirts, even in summer, because people would ask me about the bruises. One morning I woke up with a numb leg and found that I had somehow ruptured two spinal discs while in a blackout at home. For the last 4 years I lived alone in a small house. The ceiling of one room had collapsed and plaster dust was everywhere, coating the garbage and newspaper that littered the floor. Empty food cartons, beer cans, bottles, and dirty clothes lay where they were tossed. I'd forgotten, or I had gotten a cat because the mice were out of control. But I was not consi- considious about cleaning up after the cat. It is not surprising that I had few visitors and neighbors tending to avoid me. The last few months were filled with fear and self-pity. I began to contemplate suicide with increasing regularity, yet I was afraid of dying. I remember thinking that this life could go on, never getting better and slowly fading away to nothing. Hi, Ava. Then I began to hear the whispers. I became convinced that there were people living in my house. I couldn't see them except for an occasional glimpse out of the corner of my eye, and so I concluded that they were small and somehow living in the walls or under the stairs. What are you eating? Stop it. No, no. I could hear them plotting to kill me. There were nights when I went to bed with a knife in hand to protect myself. Other nights I locked myself in the bathroom so they couldn't get me. One night I left a shot of vodka on the mantelpiece so they would go after that and leave me alone. Then a miracle occurred. An evening came when I decided to have one drink outside and then go straight home. I had that drink and my house, left from my house. The next thing I remember is waking up the next morning with a stranger I had picked up in a bar. Apparently, I had gone on autopilot and in a blackout resulting from just one drink, had gone on a tear. The look of disgust and pity on the face of that stranger was the jolt I needed. I suddenly realized that my life was totally insane, that my drinking was out of control, and that I was either an alcoholic or a candidate for committal to the local asylum. Not wanting to be locked up, I decided to try Alcoholics Anonymous. I called my former lover, and he put me in contact with an individual who took me to my first meeting. Although I can barely recall anything about that meeting, I heard two things I have never forgotten. The total revelation to me. For a long time, I had believed that alcohol was one of the few positive things left in my life. I looked forward to my first drink every evening and thought that alcohol was holding my life together. I had to drink to survive, let alone to live or to have any comfort. Yet here, people who had been in the same boat were telling me that I didn't have to drink. I don't think I believed them that night, but it gave me enough hope to avoid drinking the rest of the day. The second thing I heard was, "You don't have to be alone anymore." This too was a revelation. For years I had rejected or been rejected by friends, lovers, family, and God. I was alone and afraid. My life had narrowed to work and the bottle, and work remained in the picture only because it was necessary to enable me to buy the bottle. The isolation and loneliness that alcoholism brought weighed heavily on me, and those words lifted an immense burden of fear. Again, I'm not sure that I completely believed, but I felt hope for the first time in years. I did not fall in love with AA at first glance. The man who took me to my first meeting later became my sponsor, and he had to put up with objections, arguments, questions, and doubts. Everything a trained but very muddled legal mind could throw at him. He was gentle with me. He did not push his opinions on me. He had the sense to see that I was so afraid and so used to being alone that I could not face a hard sell approach. Listened to my questions, answered some, and suggested that I could best answer others myself. He refused to argue, but was willing to explain and share his own experiences. I had asked him to be my sponsor before I knew what he did for a living and felt I could not back out of the relationship when I discovered he was a minister. My alcoholism and my lifestyle had led me to reject the religion and the God of my upbringing. I'd never replaced them. Instead, I was an agnostic, doubting the existence of God, but afraid to say so in case I was wrong. My self-pity and self-victimization led me to doubt that a caring God could exist if he did. Why had he given me so many problems? I was very, very wary of the members who talked of their spiritual life. My sponsor was a living damper on my intolerance, but even more, he told me that if it would be alright for me to doubt God, that AA was not religious program, and to belong, I did not have to adhere to any set of beliefs. He suggested that for me a good starting point would simply be recognition of the fact that I had failed in running the world. In short, acceptance of the fact that I was not God. He also suggested that I might try occasionally to act as if I believed. Somewhere I had heard that it is easier to act yourself into a new way of thinking than to think yourself into a new way of acting. And this made sense in the context of acting as if. Hopper, get out of there! Pull it down. I also thought that people in meetings sometimes seem too standoffish and overly concerned with their friends and acquaintances rather than with me, the newcomer. Well, on my way toward developing a resentment, I expressed this to my sponsor. He suggested that I might find people more commu- communi- communicative if I took the coffee making commitment for the group I had joined. Although I thought I was far too special to make coffee, I did figure that as coffee maker I would have the chance to select decent cookies, and so I agreed. My sponsor was right. Again, people did start to speak with me, if only to complain about the coffee and cookies, but once a conversation starts, communication frequently continues. I started to work on the steps, and even with my difficulty over the third step and the God concept, I began to develop a sense of trust in AA group and in the ideals of the fellowships as a manifestation of a power greater than myself. Although for many years I did not come to an acceptance of a God who intervened personally and directly in the lives of individuals, I was able to accept the idea of a force that moved in the rooms and animated AA members with a sense of unconditional love. That satisfied my spiritual needs for a long time. I asked a later sponsor took me through step 8 and 9 and provided me with support during some trying times. In my mind, or in my third year of sobriety, I was bedridden for over a month as a result of that earlier injury to the spinal disc. My father died, a relationship ended, and the epidemic started to hit home of that in the next few years. Almost half of my gay friends died. I learned in that year that if I ask for help, my higher power will never give me anything I can't handle. It was in the period that I started to turn service beyond the group level. I had helped in founding the first gay AA group in my part of town and was elected General Service Representative after having served in other group offices. I knew nothing about General Service at that time, and I decided to learn what it was all about so I could do a decent job and be able to pass it on to a successor as quickly as possible. After 2 years, I went on to do a number of other jobs and services. In all these positions, I never felt obligated to conceal or deny my sexuality. I have always felt the representatives of groups in my area were concerned only with how we carried the message of recovery, not with what I might do in my personal time. When I first came to the fellowship, I'd lost my health and sanity, my friends, much of my family, my self-respect, and my God. In the years since, all of these have been restored to me. I no longer have the sense of impending doom. I no longer wish for death or stare at myself in the mirror with loathing. I have come to terms with my higher power. After more than a dozen years in the AA fellowship, I was able to join a religious group and have now become active in that organization. I have a full, happy life with friends and loving family. Recently, I retired and have begun to travel throughout the world. I've attended and felt welcome at AA meetings wherever I have gone, inside and outside the United States. Even more important, I have returned to my home group and am still asked to make coffee. I now have an extended family that is intentional or international in scope, all the members of which are joined by bonds of shared pain and joy. I learned of service work, I think it was my second meeting, if I'm right. My service work, I put out the pamphlets, the little pamphlets. I would set those up. Um, I would make uh, zucchini bread and stuff like that for meetings. Um, I would help set up chairs, put chairs away, move tables, greet people, shake hands, mingle with everybody else. Even when getting a cup of coffee, I would always try to start a conversation with someone because when you're in AA, we're not judging each other. And that makes it a lot different than dealing with people that don't know or don't understand what we feel about alcohol because we have that obsessive mind that's like, I can't live without it. Some people, they can drink and be fine and not think nothing of it. Us, that's all we thought of was the drink. And we didn't care who we hurt, what we said, what we did, where we went, um, the people we met, the stuff we did in the bars, or the stuff we did to our neighbors and stuff like that. We didn't care. And when I got to AA, I'm shy. Haha. I know I'm doing this, right? Well, AA taught me how to do this, how to be open about my alcoholism, my alcoholic problem. Um, this says also, right at the beginning, it says, drinking was always a part of my family background. In my family, it wasn't just men that would drink. It was women. Sometimes it was the teenagers. Um, but yeah, I mean, we had all of that too, and um, so I have a father and I have my dad. They're two separate people. My birth father was an alcoholic all the way till he died. And he did things that he never admitted to doing. So it's hard to make my amends to that person. There were several times I'd be drunk and call him and ask him why he did those things, and he would never have an answer. And so I drank more because I didn't like his answer, because I knew better than what he was not saying, you know. But even so, being an alcoholic, I don't know if it's in your blood or if it's just, I can't blame it on somebody else. And that's what I've learned, is you can't blame it on somebody else because you made the choice to go ahead and go and get that drink and continue to drink. Sometimes, like this person, it took a while for him to get up to where he was drinking daily. It took me all the way till I got into my 30s to be a daily drinker. I wish I had never done that. But the reason I think that I didn't drink until I hit my 30s is because I already knew that I could become an alcoholic. I knew that when I was little. And knowing that from a very young age, I fought it. And I fought it until I hit 30. So, my point is also, I didn't, I got baptized as a teenager. I did that solely for the purpose because my grandmother wanted me to. Um, I'm not religious. I believe that there's something bigger than me that controls everything. And, that's what I give my issues to. AA has taught me that. AA has taught me to not expect your plans to always go as planned. Because sometimes things can be in your way, things change, and you just have to go with it. And being an alcoholic, you don't want to go with it with the drink. You want to go with it sober. And as time goes on, it's easier to work your program and stay sober. But also, like he said, AA is literally everywhere. Anywhere you go, you can find AA. You can find it here online, like I'm doing today, like I do every Tuesday morning at 11 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, and I do it every Saturday at 5 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. I do them because I got this gift for free, and I am not scared or ashamed to say I'm a recovering alcoholic and I can help. And there is help. You've got this and you can do it. You just have to do it for you. Nobody else but you. If you're trying to do it for someone else, it may not work. But I hope it does. Yes.
I have to go get tomato paste.
What?
I have to go get tomato paste
Okay.
now. So
Text me because I don't understand what you're saying, but
I'm making spaghetti for dinner, but I need tomato paste.
oh, there's
I'm
no
out.
more of the cube? Okay.
I'm out.
He's making spaghetti tonight. You gonna get garlic bread?
That's one thing that I forgot.
Texas too. Anyway, I hope this me doing these meetings. Thank you, Shannon, for being here. Thank you, Ash. Thank you, Lily. Thank you, Ava. If I missed anybody, I'm sorry. When I get into talking about AA and reading the books and stuff, I just really get into it because it's a wonderful thing and it helps. You just have to want to achieve your goal of being sober and staying sober. And there's fellowship everywhere, everywhere. And so I'm going to go ahead and read the daily reflection and let you guys go back about your day. And I hope you guys find the blessings of your sobriety. And every day you wake up and say, not today, I'm not drinking today. So it's February 4th, when faith is missing. I do not know how this happened, but it always seems to be along the lines of what I'm reading. Anyway, sometimes AA comes harder to those who have lost or rejected faith than to those who never had any faith at all, where they think they have failed faith and found it wanting. They have tried the way of faith and the way of no faith. 12 traditions and 12, 12 steps and 12 traditions. I was so sure God had failed me that I became ultimately defiant, though I knew better, and plunged into a final drinking binge. My faith turned bitter, and that was no coincidence. Those who once had great faith hit bottom harder. It took hitting. It took time to rethink my faith. Though I came to AA, I was grateful, intellectual to have survived such a great fall. But my heart felt callous still. I stuck with the AA program and alternatives were too bleak. I kept coming back, and gradually my faith was resurrected. Amen to that. Yes, it's the way it works. Uh, God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Keep coming back. It works if you work it. Love you guys. Stay safe, stay sober, and have a wonderful week.